Power is often shown through armies, flags, and speeches. But the real power in history has rarely worn a uniform. It has no anthem, no border, no capital city, yet it influences kings, presidents, and entire empires. This power is not taken by force, it is granted by need. Whenever nations rise, they need money to build. Whenever wars are fought, they need money to continue. And whenever economies collapse, someone must lend. The lender decides who survives and who falls. This is the story of how banks quietly shaped the world, how they moved behind thrones, behind governments, behind flags, how they gained power not by ruling land, but by ruling debt, and how today nations are no longer sovereign in the way they believe, because real power moved from the battlefield to the balance sheet. Welcome to the empire you cannot see. Our story begins in Venice, 1200 AD, a city of merchants, sailors, and trade flowing through every port. Venice didn't conquer through armies, it conquered through contracts. Its power came from controlling credit, not territory. Here, wealthy merchant families began lending gold to kings, not because they believed in the kings, but because they charged interest. Wars were financed, ships were built. Trade routes expanded, but debts had to be repaid, and kings rarely pay on time, so lenders demanded something more valuable than money: political influence. A seat at the table, a say in decisions. Venice became wealthy enough to influence other nations' wars, not by taking sides, but by funding both sides. Profit was guaranteed. Victory didn't matter. This was the birth of the banker-statesman. The world would never be the same. Florence, 1400s. The Medici family enters history. They are not warriors, generals, or conquerors. They are bankers, and that's enough. They build one of the first international banking networks, with branches across Europe connected by coded ledgers and couriers. But they do something revolutionary. They finance the church. By lending to the Pope, they become the Pope's banker, which means they now influence religious power. Soon, the Medici placed their own family members into the Vatican itself. Not by war, by credit. Their wealth funds art, architecture, and the Renaissance itself. They reshape culture, religion, and politics, silently. Europe's most powerful thrones now depend on Medici loans. Influence flows not from crown to bank, but bank to crown. A new global hierarchy is forming. By the 1600s, Europe is constantly at war. War requires weapons, armies, ships, uniforms, supply lines. And that requires money, more than kings have, so kings turn to bankers, borrowing so heavily that the banker becomes the true strategist. Wars no longer depend on who has the better army, but on who has the better credit. A nation that loses financing loses the war before the first shot. Bankers begin influencing when wars start and when they end. They fund political coups and royal marriages. Their ledgers shape borders more reliably than armies do. The battlefield is now controlled by balance sheets. Soldiers bleed, kings boast, bankers collect. This is not accidental. It is the business model. Power has quietly shifted. By 1694, England is drowning in war debt. The crown is bankrupt, unable to continue. So private creditors offer a solution. They will pay the debt in exchange for the right to create money. And thus, the Bank of England is born. Not a bank for the people, a bank for the government. It gains the authority to issue national currency, which means the government no longer controls its own money. The lender does. The power to print money becomes the ultimate weapon. Armies march, economies rise, empires expand, all funded by credit. But credit now belongs to bankers, not kings. A nation is sovereign only as long as it can borrow. The throne is now secondary to the vault. A silent monarchy replaces the visible one. The 1800s introduced the most powerful banking dynasty in modern history. The Rothschilds do not take power, they calculate it. They master the one battlefield that no nation can escape: information. By creating the fastest courier network in Europe, they learn news before governments do. When Napoleon is defeated at Waterloo, the Rothschilds know hours before London. They walk into the stock exchange, silent, calm. They begin selling British bonds, making others panic. Everyone believes Britain has lost the war. Prices crash, wealth evaporates, and when the market is at its lowest point, the Rothschilds buy back everything. One family quietly takes control of the British economy in a single day. Not with swords, not with armies, but with timing, psychology, and debt. Governments now fear financial defeat more than military defeat, because the banker sees the future and bets on it. Over time, private banking families push for a single goal: control money creation at the national level. This leads to the rise of central banks: Federal Reserve, Bank of Japan, European Central Bank. They issue currency, set interest rates, determine inflation, and manage national debt. But here is the secret: they are not fully controlled by governments. They operate independently, above elections, above public vote. Leaders change, parties shift, policies swing, but central banks remain untouched. Politicians become temporary, bankers become permanent, and whoever controls the money supply controls the direction of the nation. Wars, recessions, booms, all can be engineered with interest rates alone. The public sees economic cycles, but behind cycles are decisions. And behind decisions are individuals you will never see on television. Power is quiet when it is absolute. In 1913, a small group of bankers meet in total secrecy on Jekyll Island. No reporters, no records, no official acknowledgement. Their goal? Create a private central bank that can control the US economy. And they succeed. The Federal Reserve is formed, not owned by the government, owned by member banks, the very institutions it regulates. The fox is now guarding the henhouse. The Fed can create dollars out of nothing and lend them with interest. Every dollar in circulation is born as debt, which means the economy can never be debt-free. The more America grows, the more it owes. The more it owes, the more interest flows upward. Power moves quietly to those who need no permission. The United States gains global power, but loses economic control. The bankers step deeper into the shadows. War is not just destruction, it is business. Every bullet, tank, plane, ration, and uniform is paid for by loans. Governments borrow, banks lend. And when the war ends, the nation owes even more. Wars become profitable only for those who never fight them. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Iraq. The names of the conflicts change, but the financing pattern stays the same. Nations destroy each other and rebuild using borrowed money. Money returns to the lenders with interest. Human lives become collateral in the grand ledger of power. Politicians talk of patriotism. Bankers talk of returns. War becomes not tragedy, but opportunity. When blood is spilled, profit flows. And the public never sees the hand behind the curtain. By 1971, the US dollar loses its gold backing. The world should have abandoned it. But it didn't. Why? Because of oil. The US makes a deal with Saudi Arabia: sell oil only in dollars, in exchange for military protection. Now every nation needs dollars to buy energy. And to get dollars, they must borrow from US-controlled banks. The dollar becomes the world's lifeblood, not because it's strong, but because it's required. This is not economics, this is empire. An empire without borders, flags, or armies, yet everywhere. Nations that resist are destabilized, sanctioned, in some cases, invaded. The power of the dollar is the power to starve economies. The world is not held by chains, but by currency. And most never realize they are captive, because the prison is invisible. Every modern country owes billions, some trillions. But the debt can never be paid back, because the system requires more debt to create more money. The world economy becomes a treadmill, running faster to stay in place. Governments are no longer free. They are managed by creditors. Elections change faces, not outcomes. Debt ceilings rise every year, but never fall. Each generation inherits a prison built before it was born. Citizens believe they are free, yet every hour of their labor repays interest they never agreed to. Democracy remains the story, but finance is the reality. Wealth flows upward, control flows inward, and the cage is unseen because it is normal. Empires once needed armies, colonies, and conquests. Now they need only contracts, supply chains, and digital ledgers. Nations compete on GDP, not freedom. Leaders negotiate trade before human rights. Corporations hold more wealth than entire countries. Billionaires manipulate markets with a single statement. Social media influences elections more than speeches. Power has decentralized, but not democratized. It has simply moved further out of sight. The empire is now financial. The soldiers work in offices. The conquests happen on screens. Borders are irrelevant. Profit is the only ideology. And the world marches forward without realizing who is leading. People believe their lives are shaped by their decisions. But most decisions are simply reactions to forces they do not see. Inflation, interest rates, currency value, employment, housing. These are not random, they are engineered. When money tightens, people struggle. When money flows, people relax. But they never ask who controls the flow. Nations appear powerful, but nations borrow. And whoever they borrow from rules them. The world is not controlled by presidents, kings, or prime ministers. It is controlled by those who control the debt. History has shown this again and again. And yet it remains hidden, in plain sight. The empire of the banker continues, without ever declaring itself. Thanks for watching. See you next time.